There's another part of this whole story, the AEW lawsuits, Jim. And we'll talk more about this as it transpires, but I guess as the news broke, or shortly after it, I think it was the same day, Jim Ross went on a podcast and dismissed the whole thing, called it frivolous, said that...
Well, hold on now.
Because Tony Khan has more money, that it's impossible to win against that?
Hold on now. And yes, he did say that. And I dismissed the whole thing as a characterization. But here the problem becomes, I like Kevin Kelly. Of course, I like Stephen P. Nude. I like Jim Ross. Right? Tate's, I particularly don't care either way.
The boys.
I'm just being honest. I've met him like once in my fucking life, so I don't care. But again, this is almost like the fucking thing with Kevin and Ian, in that everybody is being sensitive. And I wish that they would not feel the need to comment as they do, you know, in public, if you will. But JR basically, yes, he did say, and he equated this suit, which is why I disequated it, with that thing from the shyster, what? The Greek lawyer. What was it?
Constantine Kryos or Kairos?
Kairos.
It was definitely Constantine with a K.
Yeah, well, his clients were crying afterwards because he didn't do shit. He couldn't even write his writs properly. And if you've read the writs that he's written, you'll know they were really ill-written writs. But anyway, he equated it with that type of suit, like the suit before, and used the word frivolous. And unfortunately, he was being prodded for an answer on pending litigation against a company that he currently works for. So what's he going to say? He can't really tell the truth, but he shouldn't use the word frivolous because he ought to know that Stephen don't do frivolous. So that provoked some ill feelings there, is possibly where you were going.
Well, yeah, he made these comments. Stephen P. New heard the comments and responded. I have his comments here. Do you want to hear those?
I certainly do.
Here's what he had to say.
Because it will help when we hear from the peanut gallery after that again. Go ahead.
I need to make a response. JR, Jim Ross, called this lawsuit frivolous. Well, let me tell you something, Bula Bula. This is not a frivolous lawsuit. You're part of the problem. You, Jim Ross, are part of the problem. Because you fed the guys in WWE, as talent relations, these crap contracts for a quarter of a century. You told these guys that it was a take it or leave it deal, and they needed to sign these crap contracts that were contracts of adhesion, that they should have never have signed, or they should have lined the arbitration provisions out of it. I'm not shocked in the least that you go on a podcast and you say this is a frivolous lawsuit. I might lose it, but by God, it's not frivolous. I can tell you that. Tony Khan's paid JR a lot of money to do nothing for about 5 years now. And so, if I were Jim Ross, and I were living at Jacksonville Beach, and making a bunch of money to not do much at all, I'd probably come out and call Stephen P. New's lawsuit frivolous also. Everybody's got a price. And those were Stephen's comments.
Well, there was a prickly but understandable response to a major attorney being accused of filing a frivolous suit. However, I will say that one of my new favorite sayings, Brian, both of these things can be true. JR was having all those people sign crap contracts because he was the head of talent relations in the WWF. But JR didn't write the crap contracts. JR was the messenger of death, but the crap contracts were written by not even Vince McMahon, but at Vince McMahon's direction for the terms that he wanted to keep these independent contractors under control. And it was, again, a take it or leave it proposition for almost everybody except Hulk Hogan or Steve Austin or maybe The Rock or whatever, that you would either sign once you had negotiated the terms you could negotiate, merchandising, compensation, possibly time off, those type of things. What you couldn't negotiate your way out of was you're an independent contractor. You have no employment rights. You have no profit sharing, pension, 401k, health insurance benefits, all those things that we always heard in the wrestling business that people got when they had a job at Acme Widget or whatever.
Well, the other
that
thing
was,
is,
I'm just saying that was true, that JR was saying take it or leave it, because that was the conditions of the company that he also worked for as well. So he never said, and I mean, I've heard some of the negotiations and obviously been in some, nobody ever said, well, this is a wonderful thing for your retirement and your goddamn, your health insurance and all that stuff. It was, here's the way the deals work, but here's what you're going to get. But, there weren't any other deals in the wrestling business, so that's why you couldn't get them. So both of these things can be true. JR did make people sign those crap contracts because they wanted to sign them because those are the only kind of contracts they were going to get.
But what exactly does he think is frivolous is what we don't know. Does he think the defamation cases, independently against Tony Khan by the Tates and against Ian Riccaboni by Kevin Kelly, those are frivolous? Or that the idea that wrestlers should be classified as independent contractors and that AEW is falsely misclassifying them is frivolous?
I think he is mischaracterizing this whole thing as being frivolous because other people have tried it and done a poor job of it and not been able to demonstrate their case or present their case well. And we've said all along, this is the, especially with the WWE, but now Tony wants to play with the big boys, that this is the Achilles heel of the wrestling industry as an industry, is that the fucking wrestlers are still like, when I used to call a guy up that lives 6 hours away and say, hey, can you make Marietta on Thursday the 20th, be there at 7 o'clock? Sure. And there was the fucking contract, right? It's so this is the Achilles heel. And I think JR just assumes, because he probably hadn't paid a lot of attention or read much about this, or probably give a shit, that this is another one of those deals. And again, I can't speak for the Tates and defamation, because I don't know what their character is to begin with. But with Kevin Kelly, there's been goddamn, fucking violence, physical violence, verbal threatening, and fucking felons involved in some of the shit in AEW. They didn't get fired. So I'd like to hear more about what's up with that.
Well, again, with his thing with the defamation, it's specific against Ian Riccaboni for labeling him as QAnon, which he is saying that he is not.
Well, and again, yes, I was talking about the Tates with the defamation for the fucking no-shows with Tony. I don't give a shit there. I'd like to see, do we have pictures of Kevin at a QAnon fucking planning commission? I'd like to see more of that, but the thing that I'm really interested in is let's just open up these contracts where you can promise a guy, we'll leave your other job and we'll pay you for 3 years, except when we change our mind in 9 months because of something that we couldn't take care of internally, we'll just fucking fire you, and what are you going to do about it? And or what working conditions are the people under that, well, exactly, Your Honor. Why, or Your Honor might say to counselor, why is it that these guys are so desperate to work for you that they will fucking drive 3 hours, 200 miles down the road to an airport to fly to another country, to get in a fucking car, to drive over to a building and get thrown around and beat up by somebody, and then repeat that fucking trip home? And you can't even fly them out of their own fucking backyard or whatever. That's the issue, is are we going to open up any of these contracts and see what they look like? Don't you think?
Well, we shall see. Again, Jim Ross pointed out Tony Khan has a lot of money and he can fight, until everyone else runs out of money.
Well, but that assumes that I don't want to reveal because I don't know for sure, but I don't believe that Stephen P. New is asking Kevin Kelly or Huey and Dewey Tate, whatever their first names are, to give him large upfront fees. Is there a nicer way of saying this? He's not in this for the money.
I could tell you, knowing Steven, he's always wanted to change the conditions in the wrestling business for the wrestlers so that it's better for them.
Yes, I'm not thinking that Kevin Kelly and the Tates are going to spend an incredible amount of money on this, unless, of course, they win $6 billion or whatever. And I bet it's going to cost him a pretty penny for Steven's involvement. But he doesn't need the money and he doesn't need the work. He needs more time with his lovely daughter, Rebecca. So I don't think he's doing this just as, oh, gosh, where's my rent coming from next month? I better retain another client. That's and that's another thing that JR probably does not know because he's not close to the situation. But that's the point, is that this is not ambulance chasing as has been done in the past. This is going to be a legitimately run operation here.
But you see some of the chatter online, and it's ridiculous. The idea that because he represents you, because he represents me, because he represented CM Punk or Ace Steel and various other people you don't even know about, I'm sure. I don't even know about. That because of that somehow this is like just a baseless attack on AEW, because that's what we do. We go after them in the courts and try to beat them. This is a real case. Filed in a real court.
Hey, and let me say one thing. I found out, remember years ago, before we even started doing this show, I was fighting against a developer that was doing a subdivision across the road from me on the empty property over there. And when the neighbors and I got together, we found out of all of the real estate lawyers, real estate attorneys in town, guess how many of those attorneys represented the homeowners instead of the developers?
How many?
1.
Wow.
1. So when you hear about any competent attorney that represents more than one person in the wrestling business, you have to kind of figure it's because most of the fucking people in the wrestling business that have attorneys are the goddamn ones with all the money, which is generally the fucking promoters.
And by the way, technically now he represents the entire roster of AEW, because if this class action thing goes through, he represents everyone who's ever worked there and anyone who works there.
Whether they like it or not.
John Moxley, meet your new attorney, Stephen P. New. Jim, before we wrap this up, Tony Khan.
Well, that's why I was going to saving the best for last. Tony Khan had to weigh in, and we just read the statement that Stephen made to the statement that JR made. And then Tony tweeted this, and I'll let you read the tweet.
From the night before the pay-per-view, by the way. I've just read Stephen P. New's comments about Jim Ross. I'm shocked and appalled by these comments on legend Jim Ross, part of AEW's foundation, someone so important from the beginning of AEW, and still right now today. AEW, JR, and I reserve all rights. See you tonight at AEW All Out. Oh, it was actually the day of. Excuse me, I was wrong.
Yeah, he was so appalled, he still got the fucking see you tonight at the pay-per-view plug-in. But
see, this is where it gets to be bullshit. This is where he's pandering, trying to rally people online to get behind AEW the weekend of a pay-per-view.
Well, here's the thing. It almost worked with me. Because I saw that before I actually heard what Steven had said about what JR had said. And I'm like, oh my God. Because I didn't realize again, but this is the equivalent of Tony fearing for his life again. Remember, he cut to promo on TV when nobody had seen the footage, just heard the story, that I've never been scared for my life at a wrestling event before. But I was afraid for my life.
I reserve all rights.
All rights to his life. But no, he said that after the all-in thing last year at Wembley. And then by the time maybe the impact of that statement wore off by the time they actually marked themselves into playing the footage where it showed that Tony was witness to a fucking front face lock at a scuffle and was yelled at for 3 seconds from somebody on the other side of a fucking table.
And then he got hit really hard because then his ratings went away.
Well, that's what he was scared. He was scared for his ratings. But that's the thing is, now he issues this tweet like the ultimate drama queen, the tweeting equivalent of I was scared for my life. And I see that and I thought, oh my God, has Stephen gone out of his mind? What is he saying about Jim Ross? And then I read the quote of him. What the fuck? Appalled? Besides, what does boola boola mean?
Maybe that's a West Virginia thing. I'll look it up.
Is it it's boomer sooner? Is boola boola? Boola boola, boola boola. That's some kind of college. Anyway, besides
it's the
that,
football song of Yale University.
Okay, I'm not sure where that came in, but nevertheless, unless that is some type of comment about Jim Ross's sainted mother, then no, he said, Jim, you pushed the crap contracts. You know what's in them because JR does know what's in them. He knows they're crap contracts. Those were the only kind, as I mentioned before, that you could have in wrestling, and he didn't write them. But he didn't. Stephen P. New did not say anything appalling about Jim Ross in that. Did you see appalling?
See, this is where it's so stupid that Tony would do this. You want to talk about people saying appalling things about Jim Ross? Bring a lawsuit about this, you reserve all rights, because I could tell you firsthand some of the text messages and some of the things people in that company have been saying about him since the beginning. I think he would probably be appalled by them. I think most people probably would be.
It was when they all had a fucking uproar. Remember, because this was years ago when he had first started and he made the comment, I've told them they all roll out on the floor and cluster up like quail and wait for some dumbass to dive and hit them. And they got upset at him saying that on his podcast or wherever because he'd said it to them and they still fucking do it. And they were saying worse things about Jim Ross, the talent in AEW. On Twitter was saying worse things about Jim Ross then than Steven just said now. The fuck? Are you out of your mind?
And again, don't clutch your pearls with this kind of stuff because you won't win this one. I mean, trust me.
Yeah,
the stories that have been around about Jim Ross's AEW run, and I feel bad with some of them, and some of them are self-induced, but give me a break. Give me a break.
But I am not knocking Jim Ross here. And I'm not knocking Stephen P. New.
No, I'm knocking Tony Khan. I'm knocking Tony Khan.
Well, I was about to say, you jumped in front of me. I'm knocking Tony Khan again for stirring shit up. He doesn't help anything. He stirs shit. Oh, these shocking and appalling comments. Yeah, about your shitty contracts, Tony, and your play company. And again, it's tricky. JR said this was the biggest announcing contract he'd ever signed in the business, and that pretty much means it's the biggest one ever.
And think about his run in AEW. He was the lead announcer, then they moved him from that to put Excalibur there. Then eventually they just moved him off Wednesday nights altogether. He's had a few health issues, obviously. Several health issues. We've seen photos of them. And then now they just bring him back at random times. He appeared randomly a couple times doing interviews, like sit-down interviews in a hotel or something on TV.
When he was first there and he was healthy and he was there every week, they wouldn't fucking listen to him. So what the fuck? But the point is, yes, they have paid him a lot of money, so no, I don't expect him to say, shit, Tony's fucked. But I do wish that he had not used the word frivolous. Frivolous to an attorney of stature is like a red flag in front of a bull, isn't it? Or did we establish that the bulls are colorblind and they're going on the motion?
I don't know.
Frivolous is not a good word to a gird word. Frivolous is not a good word, gird, to use to a an attorney of note.
No, he'll use a gird buster on it.
Yes, and then you'll get your gird busted. But we're going to keep people up to date on this whole situation, aren't we, as it unfolds?
No, we certainly will, because I'm very curious how this is going to turn out. And again, Tony had a lot to say about Jim Ross, the appalling comments about him. Nothing to say about wrestlers not being employees. You know, even if you want to say he can't say anything about the defamation thing, come on. I mean, Tony's a longtime fan. He's been on message boards. He may have even been one of the people complaining about the way WWE has treated wrestlers in the past. He knows what he should do, and he knows what he could do.
You know, honest to God, the way he treats the wrestlers now, and with the perks like letting him fly around in his private plane and shit, I'm not sure that it may not be cheaper for him to make them employees. God damn.
That's true.
And you know, it's almost, I'll say this and then I'll shut up about it and we'll move along. But it's almost easier as a former talent who has seen all various sides of it, or maybe even just a current talent. It's easier to take when the WWE won't make you an employee. You're an independent contractor. You got to take care of this or do that or whatever the case, or we own your likenesses or whatever their rules are. It's easier to take it from them than it is from Tony, because Tony is so goddamn not only charitable and giving, but also there's no fiscal responsibility. It's not like there's a pressure to hit a budget or nail a projection or make any fucking money around there. And it's an endless goddamn cornucopia, horn of plenty for a lot of guys that on the indies weren't making, you know, a tenth of what they're making now to just show up and sit in catering. So I think it's more, I'm just saying the point is it's easier to get mad at Tony for not doing it than the WWE, because at least they're trying to have a bottom line, even though it's huge.
You know, the other thing is, and we'll end with this, I guess, the media rights deal is coming up. I'm of the belief that they've already got the deal done with Warner Brothers. Again, Warner Brothers, from what we've always heard from people outside of wrestling going back to the beginning, had a piece of everything. So that'd be probably tough to untangle. I think there's a deal already, and obviously they'll get an increase. But here's the question. For the people who think AEW will get a slight increase, to the people who think they'll get double what they're getting now, or for the people who crazily think they'll get more than that, the idea that AEW will now be profitable because the investment will have paid off because of the rights increase, does anyone think that's going to mean Tony will spend less? Oh man, we got all this money coming in now. I should probably stop spending. And wrestlers' contracts are coming up. And you know, let me just bring this up because I just saw this earlier. They were talking about Kevin Owens' contract. I read something about this. His last 3 years, I think he made like $2.5 million, $3 million, something like that.
I think it was 2.5, 2.75, and 3, or some escalation of that.
Right. So that was over 3 years. And at that time, it was one of the higher contracts in WWE. Now, Swerve has a better contract than that in AEW, I saw that Dave Meltzer reported. So that's what we talk about, the money and the spending going forward. Kevin Owens,
human pincushion has a better contract than that.
Hey, Kevin Owens is going to be a free agent at the end of the year. Using him as an example, not even saying it has to be him.
I think Steen will end up in AEW. I bet you by golly wow.
Because here's the thing. If you stop and you think about it, where should I be for my career? Where will I have less frustration? Where will I make plenty of money and be on a big stage? WWE is the answer. Especially under Paul Levesque. It's the answer. However, and this is where I think it's only going to get more crazy going forward, especially with a rights increase, Tony Khan could say to a Kevin Owens or anyone in WWE that's a top star, I will triple your salary to come work here. And all of a sudden, I mean, he's already doing it. You know, you saw that WWE apparently is not happy about the Swerve contract and the Daniel Garcia negotiations. He's already offering more money to guys that may not be at that level where they've done it for enough years where they would get that money traditionally, I guess. So now we could really get into a new thing where if he's got the television deal and he's got more money, he could start throwing stupid money around to get talent. Well,
let me ask you, if they've got the deal done already, why don't they announce it? I just saw somebody say, we think within the next month we'll announce it. If it's already done, why are they waiting? What is the upside of waiting?
I don't know. I can't answer that. And again, this is just my hunch.
Well, is it maybe they didn't get double, but maybe they got a little bit more because they've done something with the pay-per-views or they've whatever?
See, that's the play, and I said this to you months ago. If they do a renewal of Warner Brothers Discovery, it has to come with a Max or HBO Max. It used to be, it was better named. HBO's a better brand than Max. No offense to MJF or anyone else. But they need that. Because then you don't have to worry about people going to multiple places to buy pay-per-view. Hopefully you'll be getting income to cover some of that pay-per-view revenue from the streaming partner.
Well, but nevertheless, they're fucking mad money.
Then the archive has a place to go. Right now, there's no home for the AEW archive. Whether we like them or not, they've got 5 years of not just Dynamite, but all these bullshit shows that no one watches. The YouTube ones that used to exist and the current ones. That's a lot of content. There's nowhere that it's housed.
I'm saying all of these things, but the point I'm making is that unless they're still fine-tuning all this bullshit, I don't know why they would get more money for the television program alone that they're producing now that has all-time record low viewerships. But if they've done a package that's a little bit more, but it's not stunningly more, or if you break it down, which, you know, Thurston Howell III or a bunch of the people online are gonna, maybe it's not that thrilling. It's just more money for more shit. Is that why he's kind of peddling it out slowly? Who the fuck knows? But like you said, it's not like he's gonna stop spending money. And how long? If now he can run at a $50 million a year profit from this point onward, as soon as this deal kicks in, still, how long is it going to take before he recoups the money that he spent to this point in time and then stays ahead of the goddamn money?
Well, time will tell, but as we've always said, AEW is going nowhere. Where it may be on TV, whether it is on TV or not, remains to be seen, but it's not going anywhere. So that's, I think, they're going to be the next big story after the TV deal, is how much money is Tony going to start throwing around at top flight free agents whenever anyone comes up? Because now we have a very limited pool of people who would ever come up that are really, you can't call anyone a game changer, because once you get to AEW, you know, it's going to take a long rebuilding process for that to work. But there's a lot of things to look at. I mean, right now, all of the stars who is a star, a really name attraction in the WWE that is almost over the hill? That is pretty much, this is as popular and as over and as big as this guy's ever going to be. He's been there for a while at that position. He ain't getting any younger. And because LA Knight's new. Jey Uso.
No. Figure the Usos out of this equation, because they're not going to break up the family with this bloodline being so hot. Owens fits that category because he's been there a while. Can you say that Kevin Owens is going to, in the future, be more over in the WWE and used better and more popular than he ever has been before?
No, I think best case scenario is kind of stay in place.
Sami Zayn, whenever his deal may be up, could you say the same thing for him?
More than likely, yeah.
They like those guys. They're personal friends. But on the other side, Cody Rhodes ain't going anywhere. Roman Reigns ain't going anywhere. Logan Paul ain't going anywhere. LA Knight ain't going to go anywhere. I mean, Randy Orton ain't going anywhere. Rhea Ripley ain't going anywhere. Sounds like the goddamn cast list of MGM, more stars than there are in the heavens. The Damian Priest at this point wouldn't go anywhere. All of those, I mean, all of their top guys are kind of fresh, younger top guys, except for an Orton who is finishing his career in the WWE. So
he's going to throw a ton of money at Kevin Owens if his contract comes up and he doesn't sign a renewal. He'll get one of the biggest offers in wrestling history from Tony Khan, you would think.
Yeah, and he'll go there, and I bet you Sammy would too. But the thing is, Edge went there. It didn't make a fucking difference. They will be booked
But that's the example of someone wrapping up their career in WWE that all of a sudden went to AEW. I thought, he had his little run here. I wasn't crazy about it, but it's kind of winding down. Then he went to AEW.
Yes, and I'm just saying that no matter what the level of attraction that leaves WWE, nobody is going to make a significant difference for any length of time in AEW, no matter how good they are or not, because it just happens. It's a hole that they fall into. But nobody on the WWE roster that is in the really upper echelon and is on an upward trajectory either is going to leave that or would leave it or is capable of leaving it. I see Owens and Zayn fitting the category. I don't see anybody else fitting that would make any difference in AEW's business whatsoever.
Well, this will be an interesting story going forward, especially with Tony making allegations about WWE tampering with contracts. And again, this is one of those things where be careful, because things can go both ways, and things have. So be careful, but...
Yeah, I've known a bunch of people that have gone both ways.
No, but didn't they even say, like, the beginning of AEW, they tried to get AJ Styles and Gallows and Anderson to jump?
Yeah, I believe they did. That's why they gave Gallows and Anderson those big contracts. $500,000 or more. No, $750,000. $750,000 a year. And then, as soon as they saw what AEW was when it debuted on television, they fucking gave them their notice like 3 months later.
Yeah, so be careful, because there's plenty of people in every company that talk to lots of people. It may not always be Bruce Pritchard, but there's plenty of people in every company that talk to plenty of people. But that's the AEW legal news update.
People who talk to people are the luckiest people in the world.